Hello and welcome to the Change Gang podcast with me, your host, Laura Ordile. I'm here to help you hold on to your sanity and your soul as you move through big change in your life. I'm here to guide you, inform you, and hopefully help you to triumph over trauma and the long list of symptoms that come along with it. This podcast series is to bring knowledge, share stories, and open up conversation around hope for those of you that suffer with the difficulties that present themselves in your life, from diagnosed or undiagnosed trauma. Labeled or not, I know you need help, and so do those that have graciously taken the time to have these conversations with me. So let's get to it. Welcome to the Week Change Gang. I am super excited to have Melanie McCool here with us today. I met Melanie through one of the groups and we connected and chatted about some other things, and I was super happy that she agreed to come on and have a conversation today on the podcast. She is the Entrepreneur's Hypnotherapist and has been an entrepreneur for about 20 years. So that's a good one.
23 now. I can actually track it with my daughter. I became an entrepreneur because I had her in my belly and I was determined to be her mom. So yeah, 23.
Good for you.
My oldest is now 23. What?
Oh, well, wait till they hit almost 40 and see how you feel then. So
right. Like, wait a minute, aren't I 40?
My oldest, I probably shouldn't say that. He's 38. I should say that. He would probably freak out if I said almost 40, but yeah, he's 38. My granddaughter is actually getting ready to go to college next year. Have you always done hypnotherapy, or did you come to that a little bit later?
No. So, and this actually ties into why I'm a hypnotherapist in a big way and why I do the type of work I do in hypnotherapy. No, I started out, essentially, I've been into health and wellness my whole life, and I thought, well, I'm going to run a health and wellness business. So I initially built a website and had different things for sale. Now, over time, I have sold so many things. I've sold goods, clothes, had offline businesses, online. I ran many different types of businesses successfully. And then until about 2017, I actually got really ill from unmitigated stress. So I didn't understand how the stress that I was under was taking me out physically, but it did. So about 2017, I came down with some health problems that took me out of my business completely, actually caused brain changes. I sought the most efficient way to get help. And it was a hypnotherapist. Essentially, since I had been taken out of the game, I was like, I guess this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like, I just knew I must, because the things that it helped me with were so deep. And I recognized the patterns in the people that I had worked with over the previous 17 or so years. So over that time, I became an international sales leader. So I was a speaker, teacher, trainer, a sales and marketing consultant. And so I was working with entrepreneurs, mainly from about 2006 forward. And I could teach them everything or give them every strategy, or I could just tell them, this is how you do it, because this is how I was doing it. And I would see the self-sabotage over and over again. And before I realized, I was like, I know there's something deeper with these people, because I recognized there was something deeper with me. But I didn't have the permission to say, hey, you should probably work with somebody about your childhood trauma. You don't say that to somebody when you're teaching them how to do sales, you know? And I didn't have the tools anyway. So even if I said this might have something to do with something that's deeper than we could talk here, I didn't have the tools. I didn't have permission. And so, as I said, when I was taken out of my career, I was like, well, I can get the tools because I understand what the deepest tools are, and then I'll have permission. So I essentially stopped. I didn't go back to, I should say, my sales and marketing consulting, which is what I was doing just before the burnout, which is far more than just the mental syndrome, it was physical. So no, I have not been a hypnotherapist all that time. However, having worked with literally tens of thousands of people before, I had this insight and understanding that has really just been a blessing for me working with my clients and for the results.
So when you got, and you don't have to go into a ton of detail, but if you don't mind sharing a little bit, when you got sick in 2017, what were some of the symptoms that were happening? And you talked about some brain changes, and did therapy clear that for you? How did that work?
Before I even knew that I was as sick as I was, I had already hypertherapy. So what I learned was I had already burned out my adrenals completely. So I'd experienced adrenal fatigue and all of the symptoms of that. And by the time I knew how sick I actually was, I had already burned out half my thyroid. So I had the symptoms of what they call hyperthyroidism, even Graves' disease, with like, the eyeballs dry and bulging. My heart rate would be 130. I was in the hospital with panic attack, but it was literally thyroid related. I had insomnia really bad. And that's probably the tipping point. My symptoms were essentially, I could not get my body to calm down. And I spent a whole lot of time in meditation, things on my ears, laying down, and my body just was running this fight or flight nonstop.
Right.
They told me I had hyperthyroidism, a condition that they say is incurable, that I'll have for the rest of my life. I do not. Thank you. So what happened with hypnotherapy? Well, within about a 4-month period, my symptoms had decreased dramatically. Sleeping, my hair started growing back. My leaky gut that was actually part of that was healing. And most importantly, my brain came back. So what we do know about that hyper anxiety thing that happens with people is that your brain literally does change. The amygdala actually grows and your prefrontal cortex, which is your humanness, shrinks. So your ability to see the future and have a hope for it and optimism, there's almost nothing. And creative ability, forget it. You're literally in, I gotta survive right now mode. So I had lost my creative abilities. I could not consider how I would make money to support my kids or myself. And hypnotherapy, it was about 4 months where I was like, I remember the day I was like, I have an idea, oh, I'm going to survive. It's going to be okay. I'm okay. It was just incredible.
It's profound.
Profound, and it wouldn't have happened without the hypnotherapy, because I didn't say is I had been engaged in personal development and consciously been doing lots of work, affirmations, NLP, not that NLP is completely conscious, but I had been doing lots of that my whole life. I was using NLP to train my sales teams. It's not like I came from someplace where I wasn't trying. I was trying, which is why, as I believe we're going to be talking about, why I'm a trauma-informed clinical hypnotherapist, right?
Yes. I wanted to get a little bit of why you went into that. I just had these moments while you were talking about it, because so many people are unaware of the brain situation, of why they're feeling the way they are, or they think that there's no way, just like you said, this is something you have to live with now for the rest of your life.
Right.
And how many people hear that and are told that about the things that they are living with in their life, and it's just not true.
It's just not true, but the suggestion sinks in because it's coming from someone with authority. You might say I've been anti-authority for most of my life. And because I'm a health nut to the nth degree. I lived and worked on organic farms before I worked businesses. Who knew? And was an herbalist and studied Ayurveda and yoga and herbalism. And I was a doula. I could go down a list, right? I am the epitome of health nut. So when I would talk to people about this thyroid issue, they'd be like, oh my gosh, you've got to stop eating this and stop doing that. I'm like, listen, I've never done that. This isn't about what I was doing to myself, externally stressing. This was actually here. It was the habits that I was running and the internal stressors. It was not, I'm going to go down that road, because some people are doing that to themselves. They don't know that they can avoid harming their physical, right? But I did.
And you mentioned at very first about too that, you saw these people and you couldn't tell them go back and take care of the child, which is another thing people don't understand, is that some of that can be coming from a situation from when they were teeny, and the power that part of us has is incredible, because it's at that subconscious level. So it's not just the power of a 2-year-old. It's the power of a 2-year-old with the universe behind it. And it can decide what we're going to succeed in, what we're going to not succeed in, how our body is going to function. And it's simply trying to get attention and needing attention. And when we go in, I often talk about it like a little puppy dog that, when you have a puppy and it comes up and it wants attention. If you ignore it, it's going to go pee on your rug. It's going to do all these things. But if you give it attention, you're going to find that you have this wonderful companion that comes along with you. Oh my
goodness. Absolutely. Yes.
And so you discovered that for yourself and came into this healing part.
I did, and I had learned earlier in my life, but it became ever more clear to me, is that it has to do with ACE scores. So you're familiar with ACE, the adverse childhood experiences, right? So the study, for those who are watching who might not be familiar, is that people who have, and they have a list, and you can go look up your ACE score, okay? A list of adverse childhood experiences, and what they did was a study that showed that with increase in your score, your propensity for illness and early death is directly correlated. So what that basically means is you've got this trauma and stress, trauma, little t, big T, it's trauma in your childhood, and it does play directly into your health unless you do something about it. So I don't want to brag, but I have a perfect score. I'm a 10 out of 10 for ACEs. Like seriously, I have all of them. So it's not what you want. You want your children to have a big 0. So I've got an ACE score of 10. And if you go and you look at them, you'll go, oh my gosh, well, how is she alive and successful? Well, that's a whole nother conversation. But because most of the people who go through that aren't, they end up in jail or dead or on drugs or something. But those of us who do probably end up sick. So I did end up sick. So that is massive. And so to understand that it really is about addressing that. And when it comes down to it, and if there's hypnotherapists watching this, the thing that saved me was me no longer fearing that I was going to die. And I don't have a fear of death. No, the little me was afraid she was going to die. And I could give you the situations that like, I was like, oh my God. The day that I realized that that fear was gone, I was walking through Brooklyn with my backpack and I was like, oh, I must be really getting to know this place. I feel real comfortable here. And I was like, no, you're not anxious. For the first time in your life, I wasn't anxious. And it was because that little me was no longer scared to death, like literally to death. And that is what started the healing in my body. Can I prove that scientifically? No, but I could show you my blood work and my stuff from the moment that I started this work to where I sit today, which I don't have half a thyroid, by the way. I only have half and it works just fine and I'm healthy. I am really healthy. I hike mountains happily, whereas before I couldn't even leave my house and I am a nature enthusiast. So it was really heartbreaking back then.
So you moved into obviously healing yourself through hypnotherapy and it's like, oh, okay. So now I need to do this.
This is what I have to do. I didn't have a choice. I was like, this is a calling. I was like, oh my God, I'm compelled. I am compelled. I have no choice. This is what I have to do.
And so did you lean into the trauma side of it from the beginning?
Well, here's the funny thing. I thought, and I'd also worked as a health coach, by the way. So I thought that I was going to become a hypnotherapist and I was going to work with people on their health issues just like I had. And because I'm a health nut, and I thought, oh, well, I'll do that. But as you might know or guess, my very first clients for weight management or health issues immediately presented with massive trauma. And I realized that I could be there for them and hold the space, and it didn't rock me ever. And that I was made for a place like this to help these people who might have come because they said they've been holding on to weight for their whole life because of, but they told me why. And I was like, oh, so I thought I was going to be working with people on kind of these easier things. Haha. And they immediately presented with this. So then it wasn't long. I had already planned it. Then it was less than 6 months later. I was able to start a clinical medical hypnotherapy certification. And I worked with a psychologist who did trauma-informed, the training in terms of that. It was just all the pieces of the puzzle came together for me in a really powerful way to be able to help people. So regardless of what they show up for, we kind of know we're working with far deeper things.
Especially if it's one of their first times coming into the situation. Right. 99% of the time we're going to go in and dig that little sliver, that little root piece out.
It's kind of like when I say, yeah, but I'm over that. And then I'll think, oh, that's exactly the thing. Thank you for saying that. When you push it down into your body so that it could now be alive in this health issue that you come to me for. Aha. Got it. Thank you. Clue. Yeah.
I know. It's so fascinating that is something you hear so often. Or, oh, I'm just here for this and that doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter.
Or even if you talk about some of the things, you get 2 or 3 things and then through the process you start finding out all of the other things that they didn't tell you in the beginning. And it is trauma. It's like, oh my goodness. But because we just see it as, oh, that was just my life.
It's just your life and you're resilient. I mean, we are designed to compartmentalize, to put it away. We're actually designed to forget it, to not remember it if it's going to keep us from surviving, from actually, and I do call it surviving. I don't call that thriving, right? You're still walking around with the big backpack full of really ugly stuff. It's heavy. It keeps you dragging. You're not thriving, but you're surviving. And that's all your brain's job is to do, is to keep it quiet so that you can go be a functional person, not a happy, fully expressed, successful necessarily person, but functioning.
I've been thinking about that a lot lately because so many people go through and you see millionaires who go and they make millions and then they lose their millions and then they, make it back and they have all these things. And so many people who are wealthy and well and all of that still struggle with certain things and they can't get past something or they can't find their happiness or there's something there.
Because success is not just money. Money is just one expression of success. I was incredibly successful, a top 1% earner, and all from the external, nobody would have ever thought. And confident as heck. I'm a speaker. I am an educator. I'm a leader of leaders, actually. I'll say that's actually what I grew into in my skill set. And there was still some stuff that had to be addressed so that I could really prosper all kinds of things. Prosperity versus just wealth, because wealth is just one measure of human success, as we said. And I've worked with people who are on the verge of their companies going to billions, and they still would have anxiety around one thing or another. People have this idea that if they're successful, then that stuff goes away. Ha ha ha. Sorry. I wish it was true. I wish there was just a magic button we could push and be like, yeah, that's it. All done. All that stuff that happened is just no longer going to play havoc in my psyche. Not true.
Well, we kind of do have a magic button. It's called
hypnotherapy. Yes, exactly.
Awesome.
We do have that magic button.
Yes, we do. You have to ask for it. You got to go full in and go, all right, I'm ready to let this stuff go. Like really let this go. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is almost like magic. I don't always know exactly how it happens, but I know that it happens and I don't care how exactly what's going on because when it clears and that person says, oh, it's different. Things are different now. Like you did in that moment where it's like, oh, it's different. Yeah. And you can feel that and move forward in your life. And then you do have everything open up. You have the happiness open up. You have the comfort of being okay in yourself. You have the abundance that opens up. You have all of the things, the progress. When you're stuck in a place, whether it's from feeling like you're broken, you have trauma, you have a health issue, you have chronic something. It's like we said before, this is how it's going to be. And I don't have the energy or I don't have the wherewithal or I don't have the brain capacity to move forward. And when that's cleared, it's like a magic door open.
It really is. And it's so much more than just recovering from whatever it is that you might have sought help for. There's a massive ripple effect in life. It's like you've been riding around on a flat tire your whole life and you don't even know it. And then once your tires are full, oh my gosh, where do you get to go? Like it's completely a different world. I had one client describe it as, well, it's kind of like I had this drawer. It was full of all kinds of stuff that I didn't even want to look at or I knew I should get rid of and give it away. And now the drawer is empty. Like there's space. There's space for me to do things. And I don't even know what those things are. It's just like, I get to fill that drawer with cool, fun things now. Like that was a drag. I was like, that's so perfect. I don't need to look at those old socks that I've been holding on to for whatever reason. Or the old underwear. Get rid of the old underwear. God.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes you don't even know it's stuck back in that. You just haven't been there in so long.
No, you just don't even know. Totally. So true. But it's there.
It is. I love that you said big T or little t. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. And often it's something that you wouldn't even consider a quote unquote trauma.
Since we're talking about trauma, this is a really huge point because within a very short time in my practice, I had 2 clients. They were both presenting with extreme panic, anxiety, not eating. They were a mess, right? Both showed up with the same symptomology. One had experienced a definitely mentally ill father, watched her sister almost killed by him with some kind of machinery, like that kind of trauma. The other one was bullied when she was like 15. Big T or little t, that had never been handled properly in the body, and they presented with the same symptoms. And just because the one was bullied and the other one lived through hell does not make her experience any less disruptive and completely messing up her life. And so both of those people get the same love and treatment and help to live their life again. And they did. And they do. I think that's what also is important to realize is that whether it's big T or little t, I didn't see one of them 12 times and the other one 3. It was the same amount for the both of them. So if you're watching this and you think your trauma is so big that you're going to need to go forever, actually, it's not true. It's not true. It's such a blessing what we do.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I think that's wonderful. And I was going to ask you to share about something.
I've got so many, but that one was a blessing to me. So it was horrible to have them both show, but to have them in a short time so that I could actually see and make that and understand that.
What was the length of time for you with them?
I'd actually have to look back at my client notes, but it was probably 3 or 4 sessions. That would have been the approximate. I mean, I have people who sometimes book their 4 sessions and within 2, they're like, I don't need to come back. I'm like, great. And they thought their trauma was big. House fires. It doesn't have to take an extraordinary amount of time for people to get back to sleep, not have anxiety attacks, eating, the things that go really fast.
I love that. And that's what I love too, is that we're not talking about years and months.
And it's because it's happening at a neurological level. We can explain sort of. But as you said, sometimes I say to my clients, I'm not really sure how it works, but yeah, I know your blood pressure is lower because of this. It just happens.
That's right.
I'm really sure the mechanism. I know we went up into that control room and did that thing. We're not going to dissect it too much and say thank you very much. I sleep amazingly. I have great digestion. My hair grew back. Look, I don't ever want to cut it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this conversation. I appreciate it very much. Of course, I'll have things in the show notes so people can find you, but go ahead and tell them where some of the best places are to find you right now.
Absolutely. You can find me on Facebook, Melanie McCool, just like it sounds, MCCOOL. Find me on my Facebook profile. Find your way into my Facebook group. It's where I do most of my giving away. And then you'll find my link to Mindworks Co., which is my website to book a call.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right. I hope that you have a wonderful week. I hope that this was insightful in some way for you, Change Gang. And I look forward to meeting you right back here, same time next week. Ciao. I hope today's episode was interesting and helpful to you in some way. If so, find someone to share it with. Maybe it will help them too. If you'd like to know more about anything discussed here today, you can find all the places to connect with me and the guest speakers in the show notes. Or go to lauraordile.com, LauraOrdile.com, and you can reach out to me there. Until next time, ask when you need help, be kind to yourself, and have a happy day.